world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Thursday, January 1st, as you are listening to this. It is New Year's Day, so Happy New Year to everybody out there. And by the time this gets posted, it'll be New Year everywhere in the world. So I hope your New Year is off to a good start. I hope you enjoy whatever festivities you had going on. And we got a lot to talk about going into the new year. Now, I want to start off with something political or political-ish that I've talked about the last couple of days. This is a reminder to everybody here in Iowa, but beyond Iowa, to watch how this plays out. Today is the first day of the new restrictions on food stamps. The administration here in Iowa, Governor Reynolds, had gotten a waiver in order to limit the things that are allowed to be bought under food stamps. Now, this is the most restrictive of the waivers that were authorized by the Trump administration. Now, she tried a couple times to get this done under Biden, and the Biden administration said no. But they are making a wholesale change to the food stamp program. They are limiting what you can get. Now, if you had a deli in your grocery store before, you were never allowed to get hot food, but you could get any of the meals that had been chilled, packaged, and you had to reheat them later. Those were all fine. You could have gotten pre-made subs. You could have gotten bakery cakes and donuts and cookies and cupcakes, all that stuff. All of that is gone. And I can understand that to some degree. But then following it up with the rest of the changes they are making, that's where the confusion comes in as to how it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay. They're limiting what you can buy in the rest of the grocery store as well. Certain meats and cheeses are no longer going to be allowed. No gravy packets, no spices, no seasonings, no seasoning packets to make certain things. No flour, sugar, baking chips, baking soda, baking powder, marshmallows. So you couldn't even make a cake or something like that from scratch if you wanted, because now they are eliminating some of those staple ingredients. Juices have to be 100% juice only. And I don't know entirely how that is going to play out because they haven't listed out and it hasn't been explained yet. At least not that I've seen, if that means it has to be 100% of the actual juice that you're getting, or do blends still count? But that would mean things like, partial juice options, like Sunny D, which is only partially juice. It's more of a juice drink where it's mixed with other things, wouldn't be allowed. So it's all got to be 100% juice. No teas, no sodas, no bottled water. Yeah, they're saying water is out now. So that means if you are living in a part of Iowa that has, say, bad public water, or you don't like the taste of your public water, but they're saying, well, you got tap water. That's good enough. And can't buy it. They're not limiting how much money each person gets, just access to what they get. Now, why are they doing this? Well, couple of reasons. One, they're trying to actually prove their case here as far as what they have been saying for years, that people are only using the food stamps because they use it to buy the junk food. Candy and chips are two other things that I believe are also going to be gone, not covered. So they're saying, well, if we eliminate all the junk food, people aren't going to use it. And I think they are trying to prove that point, that people are, that by saying, well, they got access to junk food, so it's clearly all fraud. But what usually happens with people who are on SNAP benefits and food stamps assistance, at least from what the people I know, is if they are making a cake or they're getting cookies or whatever, or soda. They are budgeting for those purchases, knowing how much they can spend. They're watching the sales and they're trying to get the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to the food stamps, and they're sacrificing in other spots. Now, food stamps is not this luxury thing that Republicans like you to think it is, okay? I've seen right leaning creators talking about the food stamps, and they end up saying that it is going to be, that they treat it like it is a um, thing, that it is like a rebate card or something, or a freebie card. You go into the store, you load your card up, doesn't matter how much it is, you just flash the card and the store lets you walk away with it for free. And that's not how it works. You get a set amount of money. Usually comes up to about $6 a person a day. And that's not a lot of money. When you're talking now, we've got ground beef prices coming up to, $6, $8 before sales a pound. That's a lot of money. You're talking your daily budget just to get a little bit of ground beef for one meal. You're going to have to plan and stretch and make things go as long as you can and try to figure out ways of making cheaper meals to make $6 a person last. And Republicans, specifically Republican voters, have been saying for years that it is ripe with fraud and that people are getting things they don't deserve. It's simply that they're getting assistance. There's a section of people out there that are mad that they have to pay their own way and somebody else is getting help. They're not viewing it the right way. They're not saying, well, hey, at least I'm making enough money that I don't need that assistance. But in their mind, they're getting the short end of the stick because somebody else gets something they're not. But they also are too proud in a lot of cases to take the assistance if it was available. I know several people who could have qualified for years on things like energy assistance and heat assistance. And their pride got in the way and said, no, I'm not taking it. I wouldn't qualify. I make too much money. Until they actually looked into it and went, what do you know? I qualified. I could have qualified for 10 years. And they get mad at other people who do qualify because, well, how is it that I'm working and I'm doing all this and I'm making all this money, but I can't afford all my bills, my heat's too expensive, or whatever the case may be. They get upset at other people having things better, or, that are getting that because they feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. So when it comes to food stamps, Republicans are, one, trying to prove that there are people using it only to get the junk food. I think that's part of their push here. And they're trying to make it way more difficult for people to use. So if you have to navigate through a whole list, a laundry list of what is covered, what isn't covered, etc., it is going to be harder for you to end up, using it. And they're hoping, I think, that a section of people are going to say, well, this is too complicated. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm not going to renew my food stamps. I'm not going to renew my SNAP benefits. And that they can point to it and say, well, see, under Donald Trump, fewer people are using it. We're doing better. We're making things better. When the reality is you made it way more difficult for people to use and get access to food. Now, beyond that, this continues a thing that Governor Reynolds had done back during the Biden administration. One of the things that the Biden administration pushed for was a change to the SNAP program, the food stamp program, and they had an optional boost for food stamp recipients. States had to opt in over the summer, and it was something like $30 extra per person or per child per month, I think, over the summer to offset the meals that the child was not going to be getting now because of no school. These would be the same people who would qualify for free or reduced price lunches. And Kim Reynolds came out and said, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not going to opt in. Instead, we want to give you food boxes. And I never heard how successful those food box programs were. It clearly wasn't very successful because I never heard them bragging about it. I don't know anybody who actually went and got some of these boxes, but they were going to be pre-set up with things like flour, sugar, pasta, whatever it was going to be, which is ironic because some of those items are now not going to be allowed under the food stamp program anyway. And one of the things that Republicans don't realize, Republican voters and Republican politicians, is by messing with the food stamp program, you are directly messing with farmers because the food stamp program is an economic multiplier, yes, where you go, you spend the money at the grocery store. And if you get $300 or $200, whatever that number is, you go out, you spend it, the store makes some money on it, they pay wages with that money, and it goes down the line. But everything you buy at the grocery store starts with a farmer, basically, and it helps farmers out. Now, they've decimated the farming industry to a ridiculous extent, this administration, and it's not getting any better. They've done things like cutting off, they're messing out with food stamps, but they also cut off USAID. Donald Trump and his tariffs that he thinks are so brilliant um, are messing with China buying soybeans from us, and now they're not purchasing the 20 billion in soybeans that they were buying before. Um, all kinds of things, and this is horrible for farmers, right? They've cut off USAID, which required them to buy any food programs from farmers, from American farmers first, as long as we had the supply that we could produce it for them. And a lot of farmers planted with guaranteed contracts to supply to USAID. Donald Trump comes in, guts that, brings in this America First aid thing, which does the same thing as USAID, except it's got requirements that you purchase from American farmers first, which again was the same thing that USAID did. But now it's at a fraction of what they were doing before. Same thing with China and these tariffs. They put the tariffs on. China's not buying soybeans. Donald Trump comes out and says, "Well, we're going to give you a um, a bailout." Well, that was $12 billion or $11 billion was going to be the bailout, but China didn't buy $20 billion of uh, soybeans. So not even close to what they needed to offset. Probably looking about maybe half, maybe a little under half, and that's before you add in the issues with USAID and other things. And he gives you this, and now he wants you to thank him for fixing the problem he created in the first place. Donald Trump will never take accountability for anything when it comes to how bad he screws up. He wants to screw it up, get credit for fixing it, even though he didn't fix it fully, and for people to pat him on the back and tell him he's a genius. This food stamp change is going to hurt everybody all the way around, but this is also a test program because this is the most restrictive program now in any state. And I think Republicans are trying to see, and they're going to measure public outcry and see if they get away with doing it and how bad does it affect them and all of this. And I really think it may not affect them in the moment right now, but come November, come the end of, the year, as people have been fighting with it for a year, they're going to be looking for someone to blame. And there is no way that the Republicans in this state can turn around and blame Democrats. How can they? They have near supermajorities in both houses of the state legislature. They don't have supermajorities. They came close, but they don't have them anymore. They have a Republican governor, and we have a Republican controlled Congress and presidency. Everything is going to be laid at the feet of the Republicans. In fact, when it comes to Iowa, we have two Republican senators, four Republican members of the House of Representatives, and the only elected statewide Democrat is State Auditor Rob Sand. That's it. We have one statewide elected Democrat, period, here in Iowa. The Republicans in the state are going to have a hard time blaming Democrats for anything. And this is typical of other red leaning states. Now, Iowa used to be purple. And I think Iowa will start going purple again. I think it just had to get bad enough for people to get pissed off enough to go back and have it swing the other way. Now, but they're going to try this and see if they could actually get away with it. I think they're going to get blown away in the midterms, and I think there's a good chance that Rob Sand is probably going to get the Democratic nomination for the governor race. And I think, considering he has already won statewide, he's the only statewide elected Democrat, like I said, and he's won statewide against other Republicans that are currently in other positions, right? He won in 2022 when basically Republicans swept everything. You know, he has held his position as an elected statewide Democrat. So I think he's got a good chance. But things like changing this food stamp thing, and it's a 2 year exemption to try this program, okay? Which means Rob Sand is going to get in, and if he doesn't find a way to fix it immediately or fix it quick enough, he's going to get the blame for something that his predecessor put in place. And to me, that is a little bit ridiculous. I'm gonna be doing my best to make sure after he gets elected, if I'm right, uh, and I'm gonna keep talking about how he doesn't deserve the blame for the food stamp program. I'm hoping the voters realize who to actually blame and that we need to blame Republicans and specifically Kim Reynolds. Now, we've been hearing about the Trump Kennedy Center, and I hate calling it that. It's really just the Kennedy Center. But Donald Trump plastered his name all over it, and he has been trying to convince us that it's just better calling it the Trump Center. And now he wants to take the Kennedy Center name completely off of it and just call it the Trump Center, which is ridiculous. Now, one of the things, if he does this, it's not going to matter because, when he's gone, ultimately, the Trump name's going to come down. Maybe not right away. Maybe not if JD Vance has to take over between now and 2028, like I think will happen. But at some point, Donald Trump is going to be gone, period. And when he is, his name's going to be taken back off of it. Kennedy's name is going to be put back up because by law, it is supposed to be named after Kennedy. And there are federal laws in place that obviously don't have enough teeth that are requiring buildings like that to be named after people who are no longer alive. You can't name them after the living. But Donald Trump doesn't care about rules and norms like that. He just wants what he wants, which is his name emblazoned everywhere and everywhere, so that he gets the recognition he believes he fully deserves. Now, when it comes down to it, it's not going to work. But see, Donald Trump is ruining things. He doesn't even realize it because there's been a lot of acts that have canceled now because of the rebrand. And of course, he's just saying that, well, it's just the liberal Democrats. They just hate Donald Trump and it's more about identity politics. No. And it's not about whether or not they care about the performing arts because they obviously do. It is the artists that are canceling are saying, we don't want the Kennedy Center to be turned into a political weapon, which is what Donald Trump is actually doing. He turns around and by putting his name on it, he makes it out to be this big thing where he's the one responsible for it. I guarantee you, Donald Trump didn't give two shits about the Kennedy Center in his first term until he found a way to make it about himself. And it's all about him worrying about his legacy. We keep talking about his health and how bad his health is. And I think he is staring face to face with his own mortality, doing things like trying to rename the Kennedy Center, trying to build this ridiculous ballroom that we don't need, wanting to make and build an Arc de Triomphe, all these kind of things, talking about getting his name or his image up on Mount Rushmore, wanting coinage and bills look, with his image. Those are all things people do when they're in his position, who are worried about their legacy, when they're worried about not making it, when they're worried about any of it. And Donald Trump is worried about, not surviving. He's worried about not being remembered or being remembered as a loser. He will go down in history as a loser. He's going to be remembered as the worst president of all time. up until somebody comes along that's worse. But I think when Donald Trump is gone, there's going to be a lot of changes in place to make it so that we could never get another Donald Trump or a Trump-like person in the future. I don't think I think they're going to do something to prevent that. Maybe a constitutional amendment, maybe pass some more stringent laws, things like that. Things with some actual teeth that would require the parties to do better in who they put up. Um, so Donald Trump is screwing over the Kennedy Center, and of course, that's just one of the many areas in which he is failing. We've got his failed economy. And at what point do we start blaming Donald Trump for everything? Now, if you ask Donald Trump, he's never going to get the blame. He's already said early on, somebody asked him, I don't remember what time it was last year, what part of the year, but they asked him, now you've been in office for however long it was. At what point does it become the Trump economy, or at what point is it still the Biden economy? And Trump answered this one, at least honestly, for how he views it. It was not an honest answer in any other way, but it's how he views things. And he goes, well, the good parts of the economy, that's the Trump economy. All the bad things, that's Donald Trump. Or that's Joe Biden. That's Biden's economy. If it's bad, it's Biden. If it's good, it's Trump. And that's just ridiculous. But that's how Donald Trump really views everything. If it's good, he wants all the credit. He wants all the glory. If it is bad, then somebody else should take the blame. And with the economy, they're coming out and of course they're saying all kinds of things. The tariffs are doing great. There's no inflation. That's not true. But this administration is going to bluff and lie and try to gaslight you into believing that they're doing way better than they really are when it comes to all of the things going on. They want you to believe that everything is perfect and nothing's bad is going on around them, but you can see things with your own eyes. You go to the store, your grocery dollar goes even it doesn't go as far as it used to, right? And sure, gas prices may be going down. We've talked about that. I talked about that in a previous podcast. But just because gas prices are going down, there's more things in the economy than just gas. And there's more to it, right? Now, if gas prices continue to go down, that could end up backfiring on the economy because if the oil and gas companies don't make enough profit, they could end up having to shut down refineries, maybe not pump as much, all those kind of things to maintain their prices. If gas goes too low, it could have a reverse effect. That also means demand is down. If gas prices continue to drop, that means people are driving less, they're traveling less. We've already heard about a lot of the issues surrounding the tourism in this country, that people aren't traveling because they can't afford it. It's just becoming unattainable here, when it comes to doing those kind of things. So you don't hear about people doing as much when it comes to road trips and things. And Donald Trump is going to have to bear the weight of the economy. Now, something else I want to talk about was about Donald Trump's health. And there's a couple news stories out about his health now that are very telling. Okay. He comes out with this story in the Wall Street Journal. And he says he is taking 325 milligrams of aspirin a day. Now, he is taking 325 milligrams of aspirin, and he is doing all of these things because he says he wants to have very thin blood. Okay. And he says he's been doing it for 20 years. Now, when it comes to Donald Trump, I doubt he's been doing it for 20 years. He might have been doing it for 20 months and maybe not even that. If he is taking that much, and he says he's doing it against medical advice, that he knows more than the doctors. Well, I'm thinking this is probably something he has started more recently because of issues that we know he has going on. They've admitted that he has chronic venous insufficiency, which is causing the swelling in his ankles. we're seeing things like him dozing off and falling asleep in public, and his face drooping, and uh, him not walking a straight line, and his leg dragging. All of those things are going on now. That he he's clearly having some issues. So is it possible that he is taking the 325 milligrams of aspirin because he feels like there is something wrong with him above and beyond what they're being told? Or is he doing it because he just thinks he knows more than the doctors? Or have they not told him why exactly this, that, well, we need to thin your blood, and they haven't told him why they need to thin the blood. But thin blood can lead to other health problems, including bruising. Now, that could explain potentially the bruising on his hands. Um, we've been watching for months now that he keeps getting bruises and significant bruising on his right hand, and now it is starting to appear on his left. But he is saying, and the White House is trying to convince us that it is all about rigorous handshaking and things like that. And while that's potentially true, I don't buy it. I think because of other issues, they probably could not get a vein started in his arm for an IV. And if he's getting routine IV injections of something, whether that is, I've heard varying theories, anything from IV fluids to dialysis to one Democratic member of Congress came out and said that they know for a fact that Donald Trump is getting $26,000 a month anti dementia treatments. And that would make sense because of Donald Trump having to take multiple cognitive tests and MRIs and things like that. That would follow up. Um, but if he is getting any sort of IV treatment, and if they've blown the vein in his hand on his right hand, they would have to shift to the left. Now that would make sense as to why he is getting so much bruising. And I mean, these are the types of things that happen when you get older and you are in poor health. Now, Donald Trump doesn't want us to believe that he is in poor health, but he had two yearly physicals last year. And now we are hearing him come out and say, well, he doesn't really want another MRI because he gets a lot of shit for getting one. Uh, you know, and we're also hearing that he is asking for a less rigorous schedule, less rigorous than he already has, because he doesn't want to end up appearing to be dozing in public and things like that. Now, he claims, of course, that he's never slept in public, that they just caught unflattering images of him, and the radical left media is making him out to look like he's asleep. But it's very evident in some of these that he has fallen asleep, like he did the uh, event over the bailouts for the farmers several weeks ago. And it is very clear that he had dozed off. His eyes were shut. He was leaned forward for a little bit. And then all of a sudden he kind of pops awake. $12 billion. Like he remembered that was the big thing they were talking about. And he had to get that point out there. It didn't really fit with what was being talked about in the moment, but they had to try it. And they had to kind of spit it that, yeah, and play off of what he just said because he woke back up. Donald Trump is not in good health. And now we're hearing there's another story out that apparently at some event here recently, his press secretary, Caroline Levitt, and Donald Trump exchanged a high five. And Donald Trump apparently started to bleed because of the high five. Apparently, he nicked himself on her ring. Now, that would mean he's got thin skin. And if he is taking all of these blood thinners, that affects how well it clots, and that could become a very serious problem. Now, we always knew Donald Trump had thin skin. Look at his ego. Look at how things have progressed when it comes to anybody attacking him or talking negatively about him or those kind of things. His ego gets in the way. And of course, he's got to look like the healthy guy. He's got to look like the tough guy. If you talk about how bad his health is doing, he comes back with, I'm as fit as I was 25 years ago, and I've been doing this and I've been doing that. Donald Trump is not well. And I think you may see a move away from Donald Trump this year as we are dealing with everything going on. That with his health, Republicans may decide to move away from him uh, if they lose the House and the Senate, or at least the House in the midterms. Donald Trump would be 100% a lame duck. I've said he's already a lame duck because he can't run and he can't win any more elections. Now he is sending out all sorts of campaign finance or campaign donation emails, and he's asking for donations. And well, if you don't send me a donation, the radical left Democrats are going to take your tariff rebate check. Now, why is he doing that kind of stuff? That's clearly campaign violations. And his health uh, is going to be getting in the way of him doing any serious campaigning when it comes to the midterms and campaigning for other people. So maybe he's just trying to make sure he gets a taste of any of that campaign donations. But I think Republicans are going to walk away from him here. I do. Maybe it's his health, maybe it's the Epstein files, and it could be something completely unrelated. But if he costs them the midterms, or if they finally realize that he is going to cost them the midterms as bad as I think it could be, any of those scenarios could lead to them either using the 25th Amendment or forcing Donald Trump to resign or impeaching and removing him. Now, could Donald Trump resign? There's always the answer to could is yes. Will? Probably not. Unless they get to and say, you're getting a full pardon. That's the only way you're going to get out of any legal trouble. You have to do it. And you'd have to convince him pretty heavily, because in Donald Trump's mind, he is successfully doing all of these things, and he's successful at getting around all of the stuff that's come out. That he's got everybody convinced that there's nothing to see in the Epstein files. I believe that he believes that. So the Republicans are going to have to be left with a choice, and they may have to decide to move on from Donald Trump. Now, maybe something comes out in the Epstein files that is worse than the things that we have already seen. And I don't know how much worse it can get for Donald Trump when there's already a tip report out there that claims Donald Trump was introduced to this 13-year-old girl by her uncle, that Donald Trump got this 13-year-old girl pregnant, that they delivered the baby. She was not allowed to get abortion care, and that with Donald Trump there, they tossed the baby into Lake Michigan. Now, apparently, there's more to that story, that apparently Donald Trump at one point owned a riverboat casino on Lake Michigan. And that apparently that is the boat they used. Now, there's no record of this actually being, like, nothing has come out yet saying what the investigation from this tip has led to, but the simple fact that they looked into it at all, or that they got the tip, it sounds bonkers, and you can call in any tip you want to the FBI. But knowing some of the other things we know about Donald Trump, it is just on the level of possible that you can go, well, it could have happened, kinda, maybe. And it makes you wonder, it makes you question things. And Donald Trump doesn't want to deal with any of that. He doesn't want us to be talking about Epstein or any of that this year. Now, I think things are going to get moving when it comes to the Epstein file release. When Congress gets back in session, we are already hearing that Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are talking about going after Pam Bondi and others for their refusal to follow the letter of the law and release all of these documents that are connected to the Epstein files. And now they're coming out saying we've got millions and millions more documents we didn't even know existed. It's going to take us months to go through it all. Well, how'd you not know? Is your information system that disorganized, where you've got stuff everywhere and you have no idea what's going on anywhere? I mean, I'd believe it, with as incompetent as the FBI and the DOJ has seemed to be under the Trump administration, but it wasn't great under the Biden administration. Don't get me wrong. I think when the Democrats get control again, they need to bring somebody in from the outside, and they need to do a complete overhaul, top to the bottom, accounting for everything that should be in the DOJ possession, make sure everything is where it should be, search for all files, because we could find a whole bunch of stuff that has just been, hastily shoved here and there and hidden. And, I think this was part of the game plan when it came to the Epstein files, claiming that they found all these. I bet there's probably a good chance they knew these existed and they were trying to keep it hidden, and they were hoping nobody caught them in that they were keeping the stuff out of the public limelight. But I think once Congress gets back in session, things are going to move a little quickly. Now, one of the things we are going to have to watch is Monday, which is the 5th, is the last day for Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene to be in Congress. She has said she is going to be resigning on the 5th. And she's apparently filed the paperwork that would do that. Now, with her resigning, it's not going to change the balance of power realistically in the House of Representatives. Mike Johnson is still going to have a very narrow majority. And there's going to be a special election, and picking up that seat in Georgia is going to be extremely difficult for Democrats because it's a very safe Republican district. However, there have been a couple things linked to Marjorie Taylor Greene that she may end up doing before the end of her time in Congress. One of those is she has threatened to read the names of the client list on the floor of the House of Representatives, and she could do that Monday on her last day. Now, why would she do that? Well, because if you do it as a member of Congress on the House floor or the Senate floor, you can't be sued. There are things in place to prevent that, so she would have protections. Even if right after she does it, she is no longer a member of the House of Representatives, she's still protected because she was a member of the House when she did those things. So she could very well read the client list out on the House floor, and she's threatened to do it. And I mean, I could see her actually doing it. And why would she do it? Well, she could be burning her own party down on her way out the door. And I think what she's trying to do is set herself up to be different than MAGA, that she has somehow seen the light, and that she's not MAGA, so that we need to give her a chance. And she's going to either make an attempt to run for a statewide Georgia election in 2026, or she may try to make a splash in the presidential race in 28 as a moderate Republican. Now, I don't think it's going to matter because she's been connected to Donald Trump. She voted with him in lockstep for how long? I don't think it is going to make a difference when it comes to anything when it comes to changing people's perspectives of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I think she is going to be trying to bring and reimagine her party. So she could do that. Now, the other thing she has talked about doing, or that she might do before she leaves on Monday, is she may hold a vote to vacate the speaker chair and toss Mike Johnson out of a job in the process. Now, if she tries to hold a vote to vacate the speakership, it takes something like 5 or 7, somewhere in there, a handful of Republicans have to agree to hold a vote of no confidence for the speaker, a vote to vacate. Well, that small number with all Democrats is enough that they could end up removing Mike Johnson. Now, would the Democrats remove Mike Johnson? 50-50 on that. They could, and I could see why they would do that, force the Republicans to try again and spend 3, 4, 5 weeks trying to come up with a new speaker to show how dysfunctional they are. Or they could vote to save Mike Johnson. And what could they do with that? Well, there's already a discharge petition on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Obviously, they're going to have to hold a vote for it, and it's probably going to pass. But they get guarantees from Mike Johnson that they would definitely get it passed, and that they would help push it through the Senate and get it to Donald Trump's desk. They may save him because there's work to do, and they may end up holding it over his head. But that's only going to be a temporary fix. Democrats are going to get what they want potentially, and then turn around, and the next time they'd have no reason to save him. Look what they did to Kevin McCarthy. Same problem, right? They used him the first time. He reneged on some of their deals, and the second time they held a vote to remove him, Democrats said, "Yeah, we got no reason to protect you," and voted with the few Republicans that wanted him gone, and he was gone. Mike Johnson's in a precarious place here, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, on her way out the door, could potentially be the one that removes him as Speaker of the House. And honestly, that would be better for the Republicans to get rid of him, bring in somebody else, somebody who is not so closely tied to Donald Trump. But either way, it's not going to matter. I don't think them replacing the Speaker of the House is going to fix the Republican problems going into the midterms. So we're going to have to watch and see what happens with that next week. Now, Zohran Mamdani was sworn in as New York City mayor today. Now, MAGA is losing the goddamn plot. I've got a TikTok that's going to go up about it later on. But they're losing the plot. And I'm seeing creators saying, well, see, what he did, that's unconstitutional. He swore on the Quran. Okay, Donald Trump didn't swear on a Bible. He didn't hold his hand on anything. He just left it at his side, raised his hand, and said he took the oath. There is nothing that says you must swear on a Bible or any other holy text at all. Nothing. There is no requirement that you swear in on anything. Now, for Mamdani, who is Muslim, swearing on the Quran means something. So that's why he did that. But MAGA's losing, of course, the plot with it, and they're oh my God, it's so awful. And then the way you hear them talk, you would think that he took the oath of office and is now president, or that he is a member of Congress or a senator, or that he is in some other major position. He's not. He is the mayor of one city. Sure, it's New York City. It's a big city, but New York City is not, he's not mayor of the entire metropolitan New York City. There are multiple cities as part of the metropolitan complex. And he's not mayor over all of it. He's only mayor over part of the city, realistically. I don't think he's got that kind of authority where he is going to be in charge of all of the suburbs, all of the boroughs, etc. But he gets the recognition because New York City, of course, is, huge, etc. But MAGA's losing their damn minds over him getting sworn in and the things he wants to do. And of course, part of his inauguration speech, he talked about getting rid of individualism and going toward collectivism. Now, what he means by that, if you listen to the rest of his speech, but see, MAGA doesn't do that. They like sound bites, and they like things they can twist and shape and turn and make into something they're not. But what he's talking about is this idea of we are better together and doing things that, that help everybody, right? So by doing things that make things better for everybody, everybody wins. And trying to get people to change this mindset of, well, I'm in it for me. And if I don't get the benefit, I don't support it. It's like we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, talking about the food stamp changes here in Iowa. And there's a group of people who want to make it harder for those people on food stamps because they don't qualify, right? Well, I didn't get assistance, or I've never qualified, so why should somebody else get assistance? And that's the mindset Mamdani is trying to change in New York City. He is trying to make things better. And if this works, both parties need to stand up and take notice, because there are going to be changes in how their parties are handled going forward because of all of it, right? They will need, the Democrats are going to need to shift farther and farther left, I think. And they need to get away from this idea that they got to go more conservative. That's going to backfire. One of the reasons I think Kamala Harris lost, there's multiple reasons, um, but the Democrats weren't progressive enough. They were still trying to stay that middle of the road centrist ideology, and we need to go farther left. The answer to somebody who is as extreme conservative as what you hear out of right wing parties right now, or the Republican Party right now, and is this idea. They're talking almost. They're in some cases they want fascism, which is extremely right wing. The way you counter that is with extreme liberal ideas, and you got to shift it farther left, and ultimately then the pendulum will shift back right, then left, and then settle somewhere in the middle. And we need to do things like that, and it's going to be a wake-up call to the Democratic Party about where they need to shift, and hopefully it'll make things slightly better that way. Okay. Now, one of the things with today being New Year's Day, let's talk about how Donald Trump handled New Year's Eve. And this just shows how different he is from A, every other politician we've had, but B, just from the everyday people. He held a big, expensive event at Mar-a-Lago. And one of the things they did at this event is they had an auction. Now, Donald Trump acted as auctioneer, which isn't entirely surprising because Donald Trump wants to be the center of attention, and auctioneers get a lot of attention. And I haven't seen any clips of how he did, so I guarantee you it wasn't a very good auctioneering experience, but it doesn't matter. Um, One of the things that got auctioned off at this event was a painting of Jesus, and it ultimately went for $2.7 million. Now that's a pretty steep price to pay for a piece of art. And I don't remember from the article who painted it or anything like that. But again, how tone deaf Donald Trump is to things like this. He even offered to autograph it. Now, you just paid $2.7 million for a piece of art that you're probably going to want to display. Why does Donald Trump think his signature is going to make it worth any more? Now, maybe if he put a signature on the back where it wouldn't be seen by the public, maybe the person might have been interested, but it sounds like they didn't get it autographed, but not the entirety of the point here. Donald Trump is out doing an auction event for his New Year's Eve celebration, uh, and auctioning off $1 million pieces of art. Most people were lucky enough, if they got the night off, where they could go out and actually celebrate without having to work the following day, and even do something as simple as have a few drinks. It just shows you how different Donald Trump is from um, the rest of the world as far as what he did for his New Year's Eve uh, celebration. Now, we are hearing that Donald Trump is going to be doing something with 3 golf courses around the DC area. And these 3 golf courses, I can't remember their names specifically, but they're ones he does not currently own. are part of a joint effort between it's a private public effort between the golf courses and like the city and the federal government. Um, and he's talking about canceling these contracts and renegotiating and doing better contracts to do better improvements at these golf courses and things like that. People are having real problems affording food, affording their rent, affording their mortgages. And Donald Trump is doing nothing to help everyday Americans, but he's showing his priorities. He's trying to do things to improve these uh, golf clubs. And it wouldn't surprise me if after the renovations are done, he tries to put pressure on these clubs to sell to Donald Trump and turn them into Trump International golf courses. Wouldn't surprise me. Now, I have not heard that that is ultimately in the plans or that that is going to be um, anything that is going on. However, it wouldn't surprise me. This administration, Donald Trump does whatever he wants to do. Um, and now he's got his sights set on these golf courses and doing some improvements there. And I think one of the three was one of the clubs that was mentioned after he tore down the east wing, that is where some of the debris ended up at. And they were going to use it as part of a remodel project at the golf course to add in like hills and things. And the whole thing there is bizarre, but you see where Donald Trump's priorities are. They are in doing things like remodeling golf courses, building a ballroom, building an Arc de Triomphe, things like that. It's not about helping people or doing things that benefit anybody that are not named Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to wrap things up here a little early because it is New Year's Day. Um, I've got some things to get done today. I believe I am going to be a guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast, probably for tomorrow. I think that's what Mike and I have worked out. Um, so we're going to do that. Look for me over there. I enjoy being a guest on the show. And as always, I will be back tomorrow because there's going to be a lot to talk about, because there's always a lot to talk about. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hope you have a great day as we're going into the new year, and business is going to continue to pick up because now we're getting into primary season, and we're going to have to deal with all of that now going forward. And Republicans are going to be scared about all of the events that are going to come up and about losing their power. So they could be willing and to start making some changes here. And we'll have to see how that all plays out when it comes to primary season, etc. So thank you for taking the time to join me. I hope you have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.